In the early days of this channel, I made a video hooking up a USB flash drive to my TI-84 Plus CE for additional storage. However, these days it seems like everything is moving away from physical storage, so of course the natural progression is to try to bring cloud storage to my calculator as well. In order to get this working, we'll need two main components: the client, which in this case is the calculator, and the server, which is where all the files will actually be stored. My goal is for the calculator to be able to upload and download files from the server when needed. We'll also need to determine what protocol to use for file transfer. The protocol is essentially the language that the server and the client will use to communicate with each other over the network. I think it makes the most sense to go with the FTP protocol, since it's quite simple. After all, the calculator needs to be able to handle it. We can't go with anything too confusing. I think it makes sense to start with the server side first, since that should be a bit more straightforward. I'd like to self-host as opposed to using a service like Google Drive or something, since that should give me more control over how things are set up, as well as, I guess, keeping my calculator programs out of the hands of the big corporations. Icewhale kindly sent me their Zima Board 2 server recently, so I'll be using that. It's pretty easily customizable and has a small footprint, which is perfect. It even has this PCI Express slot. I wonder if I could hook up a GPU and do some sort of calculator cloud gaming thing. That would be funny. I've linked it in the description, so make sure to check it out. For storage, I found these two hard drives lying around. Calculator programs aren't too big, so we have a bit of room to work with. The Zima board supports a whole bunch of different operating systems, but I ended up choosing Debian Linux so I could copy over some configuration stuff from a previous server I was running. After that's installed, the last thing we'll need is the actual server program to talk to our calculator. I did a bit of research and settled on a program called ProFTPD, which, as the name suggests, it uses the FTP protocol like we wanted. Just to make sure everything's working, let me try to connect to the server from my computer. Perfect. So now the next thing we need to do is get the calculator to actually talk with the server. I have a feeling this is going to be a bit less straightforward, since the TI-84 Plus CE doesn't have any built-in way to connect to the internet. Thankfully, CAG's Calc Labs on GitHub has been working on porting the lightweight IP library along with a USB Ethernet driver to the CE, so I think we can use that. I also found this simple FTP client which makes use of the same library, so that should be a good starting point. To get the calculator to see the internet, I've got this janky chain of adapters here. First we go from mini USB to USB-A, and then from USB to Ethernet, and then from Ethernet to Wi-Fi with this Wi-Fi protected setup dongle right here. So after a bit of messing around, I got this simple program working which will upload a small text file to the server and then download it again to double check everything worked. If everything goes according to plan, we should have the file right here that got uploaded. Nice. Now at this point I've got my username and password hard-coded into the program, which obviously isn't the best move long term. I whipped up this quick input box allowing you to set the server IP and login info, and now the next thing I want to do is get the client to be able to show and navigate files and directories on the server. Right now we can upload and download a file, but there isn't any sort of file explorer interface to actually see what's available. To get a list of files from the server, our program is going to send the mlsd command. Then the server will send back the list of files in the current directory, and our program can display them on the screen. I made this mock-up in GIMP of what I'm planning to do for the file explorer. Over on the left we've got the files on the calculator, and then on the right it will show the files and directories on the server. To keep things simple, I think I'll just show the files that can actually be sent to the calculator. Up at the top I put the current directory that we're in, and then the buttons related to file operations and stuff are down here at the bottom. I ran into this weird issue initially where file info was being split across multiple packets and it got lost, which had this weird effect of showing different numbers of files depending on their names. It took a few tries to get working, but you can finally view the files on the server now. I think I'll tackle deleting and moving next, since these should be fairly simple commands to implement. Delete just takes one command, and moving actually takes two, one with the current path of the file that is going to be moved, and then one with the new path. I decided on using the space at the top of the screen as the input box for the new path, which I think fits in nicely with the rest of the program. With these operations out of the way, that just leaves upload and download. Now I already know that uploading and downloading should work in theory from the text file test we did earlier, but I've been sort of putting this off because it'll be a bit more work than the other operations. Since TI doesn't use a standard file system for their calculators, we'll have to do a bit of work to convert the file into a format the server will recognize. Thankfully, there's some community documentation available online which gives a pretty good overview of the format. After a bit of trial and error, I was able to get uploading working, though I kept running into issues when downloading files. For some reason, the download would exit early without getting the whole file. After looking at the issue with Acagliano, the guy behind the lightweight IP calculator port, we were able to determine that it was an issue with the USB Ethernet driver. I ended up changing this value here from 10 to 5, which which somehow ended up solving the issue. With the last file operations done, I think our FTP client should be complete. We can store whatever programs and files we want to the server, and after downloading them back to the calculator, it works to run them like normal. While it's not necessarily the most practical program, I do feel like it's quite neat. Going into this, I didn't really have any experience with making any sort of internet-capable program, so I'm honestly surprised it turned out as well as it did. If you want to try it out for yourself, I've linked the GitHub repository and download link in the description, along with the CE lightweight IP port. I'd like to thank Icewhale again for sending the server that I used in this video. They also have a pretty neat community, so go check them out. And as always, this has been Tiny Hacker, and I'll see you in the next video.